All right. So today, newspapers, they're exciting. They can be a lot of fun. I'm excited to talk with you through them. I think that's because I really enjoy the family history side of family research. You know, you might think of genealogy as a lot of vital records and dates, right? And you're trying to see how far back you can get. It's more of like a vertical research game. While with newspapers, you're really kind of tapping more into the family history side, which is allowing you to do kind of more horizontal research where you're getting more deeper into understanding, the particular people. You're going to learn a lot from these newspapers that you wouldn't get from vital records. That you get more from like a memoir. So I want to talk through a few different things with you guys today. I want to talk through, value of newspapers. I want to give you some examples, the kind of detail that you can get from newspapers themselves. Like there's different types of content that show up, and I'll give some examples of how that can benefit you. And then I want to talk into, getting specifically into doing some of the research itself. So you want to research newspapers. What do you look for? What are the sort of search terms that you use? What are some guidelines to follow? Where should you go to do this? We're going to talk about keeping a research log, which I think some of you already do already. So we're going to go through that. I'll do some hands-on with you in a few different repositories, and then I'll talk about evaluating the newspaper content itself. So as always, speak up. We're all friends here. Would love to hear questions and comments, experiences that you've had as you've worked with newspapers. Okay, so content of newspapers. As I mentioned a little bit, as you're able to learn different kind of information from newspapers, the benefit is that these aren't like form-based. In other words, it's not like, I'm a census taker and I've got to go fill in, a sheet, and I wrote down the surname of the person and the head of household and wrote their race and their marital status and their occupation. And I just fill out these check boxes, right? The newspaper, the editor can really say any number of things that they want on it. It could just be a little tidbit. It could be a full-blown article. It could be an opinion piece. There's no real restriction on what can be put within the newspaper itself, for good and for ill, as we'll find in many newspapers back then and today. So what's fun is you can really get a lot of insight into your ancestors through this, not only directly about them, but also just the way of life that they're around, right? When you read a small town newspaper and you read about their neighbors and, the kind of social gatherings they have, the entertainment that they have, the crises that go on around those communities, it helps you understand quite a bit more the day-to-day the day-to-day experience of your ancestors' lives. Now, it's not going to be one-to-one. Of course, they have their own unique occupations and unique families, but I think it provides a much stronger window into what their lives were like than just, say, a census record. They can also have really cool photos. Sometimes it's of your ancestors directly, or particular places or activities they got involved in. I'll give a few examples of those as we go through this. Another thing I like about newspapers, especially the old ones, you need not have been anyone famous, right? So today, we often think of celebrities, getting a lot of publicity, and that was true then as it is now. But in a lot of these small towns where our ancestors lived or moved, they may have been the celebrity of their place, or there may have been so few interesting things that anything that anyone did ends up being written in these newspapers. And I mean, really anything. I've seen, things as like, hey, this person's family member was visiting, and ooh, they brought some cattle with them. And, it's just the most dry sorts of things, but it is recorded nonetheless. And so, you get this spotlight that you can have on really any of your ancestors, which I think is pretty fun. There's also obituaries that were very commonly written, such as, about 150 years ago. And this can give you a lot of insight into different family members. It almost always lists, who's surviving, the person who passed away. It can share religious affiliation or professional organization affiliation. If they weren't religious. I have a great-great-grandfather where it, notes that he was, his services were conducted by a masonry lodge that he was involved in. So you can gain other insights into, what they were involved with, what mattered to them in their life in the obituaries. So things to keep in mind, though, while I mentioned that, almost anything could be recorded in certain small town newspapers, everyone is trying to write something exciting. That they're trying to find the best that there is in the community to share. This means that sometimes things will be written in a more excited tone, maybe a more abrasive tone, as the case may be, because they're trying to encourage readership, right? Newspapers are businesses. They are trying to get readers that then they can, sell ad space to businesses, and then through that viewership of those ads, then collect money. And then, sometimes from the newspaper sale itself. Mostly that was to cover cost. So sometimes we have to remember that, accuracy in newspapers was secondary to that it just was exciting material, right? Oftentimes the sources are not cited at all. Sometimes someone is quoted, or sometimes it references another newspaper or, a particular organization, but oftentimes it's just declared as if it is fact. It is just there, asserted out. So you have to recognize some of where this information is coming from, you don't know. And so you have to question it some. All right, let's talk about the sorts of things that can come up in, newspapers. There's lots of notices that can come up, hey, someone's daughter is getting married to so-and-so's son, so-and-so's getting, divorced, that maybe there's a probate notice or a funeral service coming up. They're announcing the birth of a child. It could be a birthday anniversary. These sorts of things, happen. Real estate transactions. If your ancestor was a small business owner, they'll often note, ads about their particular business. My great grandmother ran a secondhand store in Pocatello, Idaho. And I mean, I could find 50 to 100 newspaper ads that they ran, of their business, which was kind of fun to see when they do particular sales of particular items, how they ran their business, so to speak. And of course, it gave address information too, with where they ran their store, which was fun to track down. So those can be pretty cool. I already mentioned obituaries. Did they run for public office, whether that be in the county or, in the city? That can be noted in there. Their political opinions can sometimes get in their opinion pieces. Military service, did they go out, for, war? Did they serve our country? You'll see notes for work accidents. I've definitely had that of, guys that work on a railroad and something slips and they get injured pretty bad. That can get noted in there. And then those just participations in local events. Did someone want to say something? Sorry. I heard some noise. Okay, no worries. So there's lots of different things that can come up in newspapers, which makes them an exciting thing to try to explore. Maybe you will find one of these associated with your ancestor, and you can use that to have a more full image of them versus just, hey, they were born, they died, and they had kids, right? What? So here's, sorry, go on. Thought I was sharing some. So obituaries, I know there's a lot of these that people have probably looked at in the past. Here's some of, my ancestors. This is Minerva Teichert's mother here on that one on the left. And you can see there's actually little, it's not the best photo of how she would have been at that time, but hey, it is a photo, and that's kind of a neat thing to have. I get to note from here, look, it says where she was living at the time. She was, at 270 Vine Street. I get to hear she died at a local hospital. That's not the most specific, but I do get to hear, at, where this funeral service was held at, very specifically, who gave the service. And then it goes more into, her history itself, who she was a daughter of, where she was born, what were some of the things she involved herself in. An active Relief Society member. She was an active temple worker for 15 years and was recognized as a writer and artist. There's many other things they could have written about her, but that is what they chose to here And then we get that long list of survivorship information, which I said is fairly common. So I think these are a nice kind of treasure trove of information, especially for those of us that maybe lack memoirs or something more specific about our ancestor, or a biography or autobiography. This can kind of fill in some of the imaginative gaps we might otherwise have. I trust many on here have obituaries from their ancestors. Is that a fair assumption? Got it. So hopefully some of them are not just dry reads, but do tell you something. So like these ads, here's some examples of I was mentioning of my great grandparents in Idaho here. So you can see at the top here, we had Frederick Kohlhepp. This is Minerva Teichert's father. He was going and looking at doing real estate business out there. There's a lot of people moving out to Idaho. They'd be trying to, prove up a homestead, and he would, help them try to find the right land that they should be trying to, go prove up themselves. So you can see the sense of urgency he was trying to communicate there. The earth's being divided. Don't come too late. So that was his way of trying to drive interest in what he was doing. And then, of course, there's the secondhand store I've referenced below here of them saying, hey, we got new stuff in. The prices are low. Come on in. Mop sticks. I didn't know that was a big selling thing, but apparently back then, you wanted your mop stick. They wanted to call that out for you. Okay, so you can learn about occupations from ads, some of their business, how they ran it. You're going to see some of their qualifications called out from time to time. Hey, were they a longtime resident? Did they know the land? Did they have some expertise in it? Yeah, you can see where it's located at. Like here it says 1 1/2 blocks south of the railway depot, which is now submerged underwater now. But the American Falls area where this was at, the American Falls Dam was put in and submerged the whole town. So can't go there anymore, but it is fun to look at old fire maps and try to infer where it was. Okay, ads, other things that are kind of cool. So this is from Jamaica Plain in Boston. There's a place called Jamaica Pond. My great-great-grandfather, Frederick Kohlhepp, would talk about, skating and playing around on the ice, and he fell in once and nearly died at the Jamaica Pond. But it was neat, as I was looking through some of the old newspapers, to find this, engraving that someone had done of people skating over at Jamaica Pond itself. So it kind of helped me, visualize what his pastimes were like back then. Other ones aren't as great, that like just the way the photocopies are done, and the quality of the newspaper and so on doesn't give you, the best sense of it. But these are from American Falls before it was, submerged in water. Some of the places that were around it. So there may be some photos from this time period. I've looked for what's available in American Falls from, prior to the flooding, but there isn't a lot of them. So sometimes these newspapers give you the best glimpse into what it was like before. Then there's, other articles that you can find. I told my wife, hey, I want to help you do some of your family, history, and we're going to do some newspaper searching. And I just want you to know that, sometimes when you do some newspaper research, you're going to find some stuff that you may not have expected. And the first thing we did when we searched up on her, her ancestors is Q.J. Cannon. So he was a son of George Q. Cannon, is how he got in jail from like assault and battery, finding someone who'd made fun of his parents over the issue of polygamy. So it was pretty fun right off the bat for her to experience a story she was not expecting about her ancestor. So you will find these. You'll find all sorts of little, legal cases, invectives, sometimes people calling each other bad names or thinking ill of each other. I already mentioned accidents and so on, but it's a lot of fun to see these things written by our ancestors. Sometimes you'll find real huge gold mines. What I was shocked to find as I did some research this past year is in, I used Chronicling America. It's a collection of small town newspapers that the Library of Congress has done. And in it, I was able to find about 4 or 5 articles written by my great-great-grandmother, so that's Minerva Teichert's mother, on just her life and the society she was around there. Some about her husband. And, they were equivalent to, biographical statements, some of them a couple pages long. And I was like, wow, I got all this amazing insight into these people that I never would have had if I'd not, searched the newspapers. So I'm not promising you that you'll find a gold mine here, but I have struck it from time to time. And when I do, it's so exciting to learn so much more about these people. Okay, let's go into researching here. I'm sure some of us have been very involved in some researching with newspapers, and it cannot be very fun. In at least for me, in my early college experience, you would have to be the nerd with the microfiche, and I've totally been this guy, where you have to go and get the roll and stick it in and work with the machine, and you're having to crank, over and over again, going, slide after slide or page after page, however you want to say it, looking for something that may have to do with what you're looking for. Like, hey, your ancestor died at a particular date, and this is the newspaper, and you're hoping you'll find an obituary, so you're just looking around that area. And it was really painful. Sometimes you'd find stuff and you'd call Eureka out, and other times you'd find nothing and you spend hours and hours and hours and you're just really frustrated. So luckily, we don't have to be that person too much anymore. We no longer have to be cranking that microfiche roll too much. There are cases it's still needed, and maybe it will never be fully replaced, but we often have other resources that can help us. These are often, full text search resources through the use of, optical character recognition technology, which has some limitations, OCR does, but it's made so many more newspapers available to us that we can just more freely search than having to crank through the microfiche. So there's a lot of great resources here. I always recommend looking at what is already there. So don't try to reinvent the wheel. Go on Family Search, see what people have already noted in memories for a particular ancestor. And they're already going to have, often newspaper clippings that are within them. Take advantage of those, read them, write the information that you gleaned from them. See what sources they came from. Ideally, if it notes it, like it came from a particular newspaper, it means that they judged your ancestor worth writing about. And if they did, that means that they may have done so again, right? Maybe it was a one-hit trick pony or one-hit wonder, but other times, that they're going to be commonly noted by that same newspaper, throughout a period of time. There are lots of nice partner sites that are available through Family Search for members of the LDS Church. So that whether that be ancestry.com, Find My Past is good for British newspapers, Filet for French, and then other American newspapers with MyHeritage. I've mentioned the Chronicling America site that's been put together by the Library of Congress, which I find excellent. There's a great Wikipedia page of digital newspaper archives that's updated on Wikipedia. And then there's great local library resources too. So I know some people have asked me even about newspaper.com or newspaperarchives.com. Some of those may not be free to you, where you'd have to pay after a free trial period, but you could go to a local library and access them or there instead. I looked up at the Bedford and Euless Library. I didn't see any that were available there as relates to newspapers.com and newspaperarchives.com. Grapevine does have newspaperarchives.com as part of the library databases. So you could go on site there to access it in Grapevine. Does our Family History Center, Brother Johnson, Sister Johnson, does it have access to newspapers.com or newspaperarchives.com?
Yes, we do. That's part of the portal.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Are both of those available on the portal?
Newspapers.com, the one that's through Ancestry is.
Yep.
And then there's another one that's British newspapers. That's a separate thing, but that's available too. But I haven't seen newspapers. What was the other one you said?
Newspaper archives.
Yeah, but I haven't seen that one.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
For the Johnsons, are those subscriptions the library version or the full version? The newspaper subscription that the Family History Center has?
I think it's the full version for the newspapers. I know Ancestry is not a full version, I don't think, but I think the newspapers is.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And that's a great resource. Of course, you need to coordinate access to the Family History Center and go during the hours, but instead of you having to pay, I think the latest price I saw is it's roughly like $120, $130 a year to use it. You could just go to the library and do your research there. So,
Marty?
Yep.
We are in the process of getting the Family History Center opened again.
Okay.
For some regular hours. We're getting our volunteers back in some schedule. And as soon as we get that done, we'll make this group aware of the hours that we're open. And we are trying to get Saturdays open every Saturday from 10 to 2. So that's an effort that we're trying to get going just now. So
I like it. I hope it's successful and then we get a notice soon. You finish your early morning yard work and then go over and do your family history. I like it. Okay, so those are a lot of your initial resources, and don't take them for granted that there many of them are very excellent. There's definitely a bunch of secondary resources too, some that you can pay for, others that you don't need to. I know the Family Search Wiki and Wikipedia both will often point you to university library collections that have digitized newspapers from their communities involved with the state university, and you can access them in many cases for free. So don't take that for granted. Then there's always just other repositories. I've seen Google newspapers. It doesn't really do new stuff anymore. It's largely defunct, but it does have what they historically put together available to the public. Archive.org has some of that too, although I haven't had as much success being able to really filter effectively through archive.org. There's guides at the Harold B. Lee Library and its digital collection like this Eurodocs guide. And I've mentioned newspapers.com/newspaper archive. Is there any other place people go to for newspapers on a high level that benefits them in their research? I'd love to hear about those other resources. Sister Hauser's shaking her head. She's like, nope. Okay, that's fine. Oh, go ahead.
No, we were saying that that's a pretty darn good list.
Yeah, it's a lot to check. This you will spend many months going through this.
Yeah, I was surprised. You have the states there. I was surprised how many states have digital archives that you can get newspapers as well as books and documents. I know North Carolina and Indiana both have those, and they're free.
But I always haven't found Carolina digital archives that easy to go through personally.
And see, I found it easy. So
yeah, I mean, I found that depending on the collection, it's easier than others. And I think sometimes your own proximity to the ancestor can help too. For instance, I find going through British newspapers actually pretty difficult. I think though that has to do just somewhat more with my understanding of the United States geographies and my ancestors a little bit closer there, so it's easy to work with.
It's a language problem, Marty.
I know that British language is too much. No. All right, I'm gonna keep going here. Prepping for research. So it's always really tempting to immediately jump into a website and just start typing terms. And sometimes that works, and that's great, but many times it requires a more focused approach. You saw me encourage this when it came to studying photos in some prior lectures or trainings, as we may want to say. And here I feel that likewise, a more focused, thoughtful approach to newspapers will also benefit you. I'll speak as to why I say that and give you some coaching here. So newspaper writers don't always care to get everything right. So sometimes it's a typesetting error where just they're typing on a typewriter and letters get flipped. Other times they just refer to someone as Mrs. That Mr. and Mrs. Frederick Colehep. So if you're looking for Mary Ellen Hickman, you're not gonna see her there, right? Because she's just Mrs. the husband. Other times they just use the initials of the person, or they crop it in such a way like Adam may just be ADM, or William may be WM, right? So it's good to know all of these little name variations that you may want to include in your search terms. So I recommend a sheet like this where you write out, of course, the ancestor's full name, you note any of their known nicknames, and then you start thinking through different ways in which they might get some spellings. Of course, there's their initials, but the clipping of their name, the other common spellings of the name, like Frederick might have a CK at the end. It may just have a C. Maybe it doesn't have a Fred Eric, like with an E in between the Fred and Rick. It may just be Frederick. So looking at different ways that a newspaper person who doesn't know your ancestor likely personally just gets some information or a tip and writes it out, the way that they might capture it in the newspaper. Surname variants, of course, are helpful here too. Hopefully the resource or database that you're consulting supports some sorts of wildcard features too. So you can try to search just for consonants, essentially, where for Colehep it might be K, and then it's an asterisk, and then it's L, and then I have an asterisk P. It's Colehep. So I can get kind of anything in between as to how it's maybe spelled. Knowing that the close family members can help. This is, I think, more valuable as you get to certain names that are less unique. When I search in a newspaper for Colehep, hey, that's kind of unusual, right? There's not lots of Coleheps I think people on this phone have or this call have met. But when we look at names like Smith or Eastwood, or with John as the first name, suddenly there's lots of those, right? So how do we, if we're John Johnson, try to stand out, from other people, and studying their close family members, the names of their spouse, their siblings, their parents, all of that's going to help you as a kind of a triangulation of information, to help you ascertain, oh yeah, that's that person. Of course, knowing when they were born and died is going to help you, because you don't really need to look at newspapers prior to when they were born, right? I mean, that's not telling you information about them. It might tell you about their ancestors, someone before them. But if you're trying to research a particular person, there's not any reason to really look before they were born. After they died, yeah, people can still keep writing about you after you're gone, but it's at least a helpful area of which to focus. The next obvious place to look, as you can imagine, would be, well, where have they resided? I'm going to be searching for a John Johnson. Well, I'm going to find perhaps a lot of results. But if I know it's just a John Johnson in Bedford, Texas, then suddenly, it's a lot more limited in focus. You may not get Bedford, but just knowing Texas, the state, the county, other places that they lived, that will help you. If you've got a known address, that's great. Make sure that you can, note that or be aware of that. Knowing their occupations will be useful. Many times an article will refer to professional work. And if it aligns with your ancestors' professional work, there's a much higher chance that it's referencing the same person. Religious affiliation, organizational affiliations, and then just kind of any other note that you might think is relevant. Curiously, when other people do research on newspapers, do you guys use anything else to help guide you that besides what I've noted here?
I use the point, click, and pray method a lot.
Does that work really well?
Well, I haven't broken anything quite yet.
One
like-
thing I use is like Ancestry, because I'm building family trees, and quite often it will point you to obituaries. So I haven't had as good luck in newspapers.com, but I let Ancestry do the searching of newspapers.com, and that works pretty well.
Got it. Appreciate that. I guess my last thing I call up is kind of noted here with close families, and that is I like to pull up Family Search, and Family Search will often allow me to jot down a lot of the information for this table that I have here as to where they've lived, the vital records, and so on. But it's also nice to look at the related family relationships really, really quickly. So I guess I'll quickly show that here. So let's hop over to my Family Search. When I get over to, my tree here, if I select an ancestor, and I'm sure you guys have seen this many times since it's your family history here. If I go to like my great-great-grandfather, Charles Eastwood, let me see if I can zoom in here. This seems small for some reason. Sorry. And then I go down and I see his, family relations. I can be like, oh, okay, cool. If other people in an article, are mentioning, some of his children or siblings, that I can kind of, capture a little bit easier, or from another marriage, right? He was married 3 times. I find that that's the helpful thing to have pulled up. All right, let me hop back over here. So research logs, some people like these, some people hate them. I have mixed opinions. Sometimes I'm really good at this and I do it. Why do I do it? Well, because if I don't, I'm going to do the same searches over and over again. I'm going to forget that I did them, right? I'm going to end up searching the same repositories for things I've already done and waste my time. But then there's the time sacrifice by noting it in the log in the first place. So you got to weigh that for yourself. I do think that there's some value here to think about what you haven't searched yet.
Marty,
Yep.
As we get older, which I hear constantly every time I go to the doctor, we tend to get a little forgetful. And a research log can be very helpful to find what you found yesterday, but can't remember what it was or where it was. So it could be helpful for us old folks also.
Mature.
Oh, mature folks, sorry.
Got it. So yeah, if you find that it helps you do it, I recommend it with newspapers. I've done a lot of research in the past, and whenever you're searching online databases, it's nice to be regimented, and this helps you do that. So you can get as much data as possible. All right, let's talk about some diving into some initial resources here. So let's just do this, live here. As you can imagine, there's going to be memories from people in Family Search. You can see I clicked quickly over on someone in my tree and in this memories here. And there's still a lot in here. Sometimes it'll be noted as a photo because someone just snapped it. Other times it is, put in as a document. And you can see right here, right? Here is that obituary of, that ancestor. So, make sure that you're searching for and looking at what is already there. And as you look at what's already there, you can use that to fill in that sheet that I already had of like, hey, other notes, religious affiliations, occupations. You're going to be able to make that more flavorful, more detailed as you look at kind of what's already available there. So that is your first resource that I would, take a look at is what's already attached. You'll feel really cool as you find stuff online like, ooh, I found an article, but you're not going to feel as excited when you realize someone's already attached it here and had it here the whole time. So do that first. Okay, so that's the first place I would take a look. After that, I really like the small town newspapers collection, the Chronicling America from the Library of Congress. So that's available at chroniclingamerica.loc.gov. You can see that they've got this basic landing page for it, but very quickly you can go over to an advanced search function. It's got some nice things for helping you limit, about an ancestor. So let's look at one of my Kohlhepp ancestors, right? So I can think about, okay, they lived in Idaho. If I wanted to, I could even, really zero down on a newspaper that most likely is going to have the name of the city they were in. So I go through here. I'm looking for American Falls. Look at that, American Falls Press. Now for the range, I'm like, well, he didn't live until the Civil War, so there's no really reason for me to look there. And he didn't even move to American Falls until quite a bit of time after that. So I'm like, you know what? Before 1880, there's not really any reason to look. He died, 1919, so there's no really reason to look beyond that, unless I'm just trying to look at some of his, descendants. Now, with an ancestor that has a very interesting last name where you don't think many people are going to have it, you don't need to worry about first names and so on as much. Sometimes I like just keeping the net wide. So I can just put in here Kohlhepp, hit search, and what's going to do is spit back a series of papers that have that word in it. You can see these are all from the American Falls Press. So this is all from his city he was living in. It tells you the year it's from. This is from 1917, 1913. If we click on it, it's nice that it kind of already has you look ahead and tell you, where it is. So this happens to be, let's see here. This is like a town fair, a boys and girls club. And you can see here that they won lots of prizes here in different areas. We got white radishes, squashes, dry popcorn, fancy cotton star quilts, wool quilts. So you see some names here, Viva, Mrs. Kohlhepp. So Viva is not my ancestor, but he is my ancestor's son. So as I was saying, when we would search here, it's always nice to have pulled up in the tree. I'm sure I could just search for the name that way, but I'm old school and go through it this way. This is Frederick. Now there's that lovely nickname piece I was talking about. So you can see down here, there's Survivor Kohlhepp. Viva is a nickname for Survivor. So that is him being referenced, there in here. So this is kind of a fun little tidbit I learned about, his wife and some of his kids of participating in, these contests in here and exhibits at the Power County Fair.
Marty?
Yep.
Now, I've used that website before, but
Yep,
I think you said something that I hadn't picked up on. This is mainly small town newspapers?
It is.
Huh, I had not figured that out. That is a very interesting tidbit. Thank you.
Yeah, highly recommend this resource too. I've probably got my best data or most interesting articles from this. You can find tons of stuff. So this is directly to an ancestor. See how it notes initials here? I wanted you to see very clearly early on how some of the spelling variation is. So in that first article, remember it mentioned the son and it was just Mrs. Kohlhepp. This time we've got FJ, not Frederick or Fred or anything like that. It's the initials. They did spell his name well here, and it does note Ella this time. But we can see here there was a county change. They paid some taxes to the old county. The county shifted and the new county wanted to collect taxes on them, but they're like, hey, we already paid. So there was some mix up here that had to be sorted out. That's not the most interesting thing, right? We all deal with tax shenanigans, in our lives. But and we may not care for that in our ancestors, but it helps root them as people, right?
Hey, Marty, if you wanted to take that article and put it in your memories, how do you do that?
Yeah, let's do that here. So a few different things you can do. So this is a really fun one, all about how my great-great-grandfather was the first dry farmer in southern Idaho here. So what you can do is a few things. One is you can just get a direct PDF. So you'll see there's a PDF. I can just click here. It's going to download it, and I can get, you know, the whole thing for that page. So you can do that. The other thing that you can do is you can use the snip tool. You can see there's a little snippety snip there. And this didn't allow me to snip it when I clicked it. Well, in the past, it has allowed me to snip, but you can just download it otherwise and do it. Oh, I'm betting what it is it snips upon my Zoom.
You have to save it on your computer and then download it to the family.
Yeah, let's see if the snip works the way I think it does now. So I think the snip's going to follow your Zoom here. Yeah, see, that's what the snip does in this particular library is whatever area you show within the window, which you can see there's that nice red box in the top right that kind of shows where I've navigated. Whatever you do there is what's going to show up in the snip tool. Then that's going to save it to your local computer. And after you saved it, then you're going to go into Family Search and add it as you would to the memory section. I consider all newspapers documents, so please add it to a document section in Family Search. Did that answer your question, Sister Johnson?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Have you done that with newspapers.com?
Newspapers.com does have a snipping function as well that you can save, you know, from. I have not looked to see if there's any direct hooks to Family Search there. Do you know if there are?
Go ahead.
Now, repeat that question, Marty.
I was curious if any of these third-party resources have a direct hook to Family Search's memories so that you don't have to save it to your computer, re-upload it, and note it in Family Search.
Oh, I don't think so. But something I was going to mention, I use on newspapers.com a lot. I use the snippet tool.
Yep.
Not the newspapers, but there is one on newspapers.com that you can snip your article, but it puts it on a whole page. It says newspapers.com. It frames it in stuff you don't want. As part of Windows, if you just go to the little search bar and type in snippet, there's a little extension that is on your computer that you have to activate. It's sort of like the Post-it note tool, but the snippet tool, you can activate that and clip out just the part you want.
Right.
Save it to your computer and then do whatever you want with it. Upload it to Family Search or whatever.
Some trouble with some articles doing that because the way the layout editor did it.
Oh, yeah. Sometimes they take up 3 columns, 1 column long, 1 column short. Yeah, it only snips in a square.
Yeah, it's not always easy. So you're kind of doing multiple snippets and then trying to merge them together. Yeah, in one image.
Snippet is
Well, I'd used the snippet in the newspapers program, but I couldn't figure out how to get it from there to Family Search. But I'll go back and try and use the computer snippet and see if that,
Yeah, we'll download it fully and then re-upload.
What it will do, Shirley, it's been a while since I used that one. I used the Windows one, but I think you can save that as I'll say a photo. I forget the format, whether it's PNG or PDF or JPEG, and you can save it to your desktop and then upload it. But so I can help you with that after I figure it out. I've done it.
What was interesting, I was looking at my newspaper.com and looking at my clippings, if you will. And so when I look at one, it does have saved to Ancestry, but there is a download arrow, and you have a choice of PDF or JPEG in newspaper.com.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Vivian just figured that out for you, Shirley.
Go and click and pray.
Nice. One thing with snipping, I will caution you on, and that is you do want to cite articles well. If you just snip, and you don't think about the rest of the context of the article, you can lose how to get back to it, how to cite it right. So now that's not to say you can't snip it. Just when you do it, like you can see right here, right at the top of this, it says American Falls Press volume, and it says, April 22nd, 1915, image 1. Well, part of that's helpful, right? I get to know the article's date, but there's other information that isn't on there that I kind of have to look at the actual article, to find out. Ooh, how do I zoom out here? Well, you can see over here, it mentions the number of the newspaper. It's number 28, right? That is actually helpful, and the volume is 13. So when I save an image, or if I take some snippet, I should make sure that I try to gather the full information on the article where it came from. That American Falls Press, volume 13, number 28, and it is page 1, and the title of the article is this. I know that's annoying, but it does help other people be able to research and corroborate, what you're claiming. Okay, that's Chronicling America. It is, again, more small town focused. That doesn't mean that you won't find things from major cities too, but you won't always strike as well as you would like. So I'm going to give you an example here of me trying to search for my same Kohlhepp relatives in Massachusetts here. I got 0 results, even though he was born there. His dad is Friedrich Johann Kohlhepp. There is plenty of Kohlhepps here in Massachusetts, but Chronicling America got nothing for me. Well, this is a more urban area of Massachusetts, which wasn't as much the focus of this particular database. So that's when you want to try to supplement it with other databases too, right? Whether that's newspapers.com. I'm going to use another resource that's available as a partner site with Family Search, and that is MyHeritage, where I will have slightly more success here. So if you'll notice here, once you've logged in and got your login, you can research, and you could search all records, but you could just go down to newspapers themselves. If I go in here, I can, look at the same, last name. I can go now to, Boston if I wanted, and see what happens to me here. This is a very loose search again, but I could get a little bit more information than I did before. So lots of results here. However, I want to use these lovely filters on my left side to make sure I don't just grab things from everywhere. So Massachusetts newspapers. That's just pretty useful for me. And then now that I'm in here, I'm starting to see other references to Kohlhepps. And I can see some that are actually, this is actually my great aunt. So if I go up to Friedrich Kohlhepp, he lived in Boston after immigrating from Germany. He had lots of daughters. So Elizabeth is his daughter here that's being referenced. And over here, being married to William Xavier Huber. I could validate that, again, very easily by looking at Elizabeth and seeing who does she get married to, right? And we can see over here, oh, William Xavier Huber, right? So I can use Family Search in conjunction with the information that's in the newspaper to, find information about them. I could click in and find it. I do like this, and you can see that there's OCR and there can be an image loaded. You can save the record to your own ancestor within MyHeritage. It isn't Family Search. You're having an import of your Family Search information into MyHeritage, and then you're able to, put it into here. But what's nice is when you save it, it will input a lot of the information for you. Like, for instance, I don't have to type in, oh, it was from this newspaper and here's the notes associated with it, right? It does it for me, which I think is pretty neat. And you can also add in some of your own notes if you would like. So I could be like, hey, this is the marriage of, Elizabeth and, William Huber. Whatever else you want to write, right? That you think is valuable. And then you can save it to your tree. And now it's going to be saved, to that ancestor of yours that, you had within MyHeritage. So I think that's a neat feature of MyHeritage. Does it pretty well. And you can see it's got the record that I put right in there. So recommend using this resource as a supplement to what you had on the Library of Congress page. Again, this is free to Latter-day Saints who have access to partner sites within Family Search. Otherwise, it is a paid subscription, but I still think a fairly useful tool. Does anyone else use MyHeritage and had any experience with it? I'll take that as an overwhelming no. But hey, that's all right. I'm just trying to point you out to other resources at your disposal.
So Marty, can I ask a question? I do have a little teeny bit of experience with MyHeritage, not even enough to say to verify your question with a affirmative, but I thought I heard you say that you have a family tree on MyHeritage.
That is correct. That's important for Family Search.
Okay, so you essentially have your family tree in Family Search, Ancestry, and MyHeritage, and so you can get all of the different I guess all of the same information essentially on your ancestors, but if somebody happens to have something unique, you have access to that as well. Are you just overwhelmed with, I think I'm going to be overwhelmed with the information from all these different sites.
Yeah, it is a little overwhelming in the sense that there's all these different, tools to use, and trying to keep them all up to date isn't the easiest. And then you're asking, hey, what's my primary database I want to work with? And I think you've just got to decide what works best for you. I use Family Search for some things myself. I like it as my primary since it's not my own tree like in Ancestry. It's more of a shared communal tree. I like that in Family Search. But Family Search, I think, is weak in other respects as relates to really digging down into an ancestor's life and gathering everything you want about them. So yes, it can be difficult, but at the same time, hey, it's exciting to at least have extra resources at your fingertips, right?
Yeah.
You
I
just
think
gotta weigh it against each other.
I appreciate you sharing your experience with that. Appreciate it.
Okay, I know I don't have a lot of time left, so I just want to point you out to a few other tools here. Let's see. There is Find My Past, which has British newspapers. I haven't had great success with that one, as I'm sure once I get more down my British ancestry line and start plumbing that more, that I'll get better at it. But so far, my rudimentary searches within Find My Past have not been excellent. Ones that have worked for me is Wikipedia is pretty great. It's got a list of online newspaper archives, and you can go to the United States and then search for a particular state. I'm going to use Utah because it's common here for some folks, and you can see it points you directly to and will tell you if it's free or has a $sign and costs money, and you can find collections for your ancestor here. So this is the Utah digital newspapers that the University of Utah has been involved with. And you can see I can put in, let's do Charles Stewart. See, there's a few different articles in here. I know he lived in Salt Lake, so if I wanted, I could limit to there, but there's not too many articles here for me to really look through. Now I know that anything prior to 1921 isn't really relevant. Just he was living in England, prior. So let's update it from here to 1918. But sometimes you can find some things that are interesting about them. Diversions of society. This sounds exciting here. So you can see it says Mr. and Mrs. John Eastwood and family. John was Charles's brother. I happen to know that, but I would have to corroborate that with you back in Family Search. But it just says, hey, they were planning to leave to Long Beach. And they had a guest party, and as I look through it, hey, look, Charles's wife gave this party. There's chrysanthemums there. Man, you can tell this is a riveting newspaper article for times past where they like to note dinner guest parties. But they did this, and oh, this is fun. This is a lot of my ancestors noted here. Samuel Barry Wallace, who's a fisherman. yeah, so you can see that this Salt Lake article it was helpful. Gave me some information about them. I got obituaries, birthdays. Interesting. Let's see what this is. It doesn't look like my ancestor. That's a woman, but we can see, oh, also an anniversary, which for Charles Eastwood. Look at that. That's kind of cool. It says, where was he living? 543, 543, yeah, Marion Street in Salt Lake. He was a serviceman. So we're, you know, and he works at a bus company. He was involved in the railway and bus companies. So again, there's great newspaper resources online. They may not all be in the same place. They're going to be very scattered throughout, and you're just really going to need to use Wikipedias to guide you to the regions, I think, that matter to you, and go from there. Family Search has a pretty good wiki itself. You can see this is one that's on United States newspapers, but there's other areas beyond the United States, obviously, in which newspapers can be searched too. And it can guide you through how to use them, how to research with them, and then go down into particular states, you know, too. So if we looked here for Utah, it's going to give us similar recommendations to what we saw in Wikipedia. Yeah, but even more resources noted here, right? So I think both the standard Wikipedia and Family Search's Wikipedia provide really nice links in which you can try to track down newspaper information about your ancestor.
Marty, you had asked if anybody else had any experience with
Yeah, I did.
that website, and in the chat, Karen says that, of course, she taught us how to colorize photos using MyHeritage, and she also says it has U.S. marriages that are difficult to find. And,
I'm looking at the chat right now.
Okay, and it's promoted as a British site, but you can find all kinds of good stuff on it.
Excellent. Yeah, I think the partner sites are really great. We just need to take more advantage of them, including the ones available at the portal, at the Family History Center. My last point before I call it a wrap then is just validation. It's really great, you know, to have these stories about our ancestors that can appear, you know, in articles, but they can sometimes be tall tales, as we see of this lovely cow getting picked up by this woman here. Humans make mistakes. They enjoy things to be exciting and to be more verbose than things really are. And so it's valuable as you catch any source, whether it be from a newspaper or it be from somewhere else, to just try to find other sources that corroborate your information. Yeah, it could be an oral history account, it could be from a journal, but when you get multiple journals and multiple biographies and memoirs saying the same sorts of thing, it allows you a little bit more surely to think, okay, there's more substance to this. That doesn't mean that there aren't still some tall tale aspects to it, but it allows us to get a better sense of was it in true fact. I also recommend trying to get outside viewpoints. So humans like to talk really well about themselves. We never want the people that go after us, our descendants, to think that we were jerks, even though we all have our tendencies that aren't so great, right? We like to be remembered fondly. We don't want people thinking poorly of us. But that can skew our image of ourselves. So that's one fun thing about newspapers, and one fun thing about memoirs of neighbors and other people is sometimes they'll help you have a more balanced view of what your ancestor was like. I know I went to the University of Utah and looked through some of their special collections and was able to find some very incisive remarks of some of my ancestors, but at the end of the day, I actually really valued and appreciated what it said to help me gain, again, a more clear and I think accurate view of who my ancestors were. So try to determine what is needed to validate. Is it a date? Is it a person? Is it a place? Is it a particular factum? Use that to drill down and find out if there's more substance to what you found before. So I hope everyone's had some fun working with newspapers. If you haven't, you got a lot to look through, a lot of digital oceans to sail. And I think you're going to have a lot of fun finding interesting and fun articles about your ancestors. One of my last fun ones was when my great grandmother won it was like a pioneer, all the oldest pioneers that were available in this particular community. They had a jig contest to see, you know, who's the best dancer in their old age, and she won it. And she was very proud of her jig dance. So it's fun to see those things, and just a picture with you know, some dates and that she lived and she died would not have helped me appreciate Minerva Wade in the same way that jig contest did.